Hey guys, so today we're going to be looking at the three branches of government as laid out by the U.S. Constitution. We're going to be doing this in a number of different ways. The first being we're going to look at the original text of the Constitution. To get a really good grasp of what is being said in something, you need to actually read it. So we're going to be looking at Articles 1 through 3 because those are the ones that lay out exactly how each branch is supposed to be made up. Not only are we going to be looking at that original text, but we're also going to be looking at some plain English interpretations of those first three articles. These plain English interpretations are only here because I know that that original text can have a lot of lingo and a lot of jargon in it that can really make it hard to pull meaning out of it. So we're going to be looking at those plain English texts to hopefully get that meaning out of that. Lastly, I am making a narrated PowerPoint for you all that'll help walk you through those first three articles as well, so you can kind of use that as you're moving through that original text and the plain English interpretations. And lastly, you guys are going to be completing a few different activities that will be graded. So I hope you guys enjoy the lesson. It should be really interactive and fun, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Bye. Hey everyone. So today we're going to be talking about the three branches of government. So the three branches of government is broken down in Articles 1 through 3 of the U.S. Constitution, and that's where I'm getting all of this information from today. So what we're going to be talking about, we're going to be talking first about the legislative branch, and then jumping to the executive branch, and then the judicial branch. We're going to be looking at the different requirements and the different roles, and also the checks and balances between these three branches of government. So let's go ahead and jump into our legislative branch. So our legislative branch is broken up into two separate houses, and this is called a bicameral legislative body. Bi meaning two, cameral meaning house, so it's made up of two separate houses. So let's go ahead and start with our lower house. Our lower house is going to be our House of Representatives. To represent in here, you must be at least 25 years or older. You must be an American citizen for at least 7 years, and you must be a resident of the state you are representing. So me being from South Carolina and living in South Carolina, I cannot go and represent North Carolina and Washington, D.C. This house is determined by population. So there is a fixed number of seats within the house that is over 400 at the moment, but that number is fixed, and they just redistribute the number of seats to each state based on population. So if you live in a state like California or New York, you're going to get a lot of representatives in this house, but if you live in Wyoming or Maine, you're not going to get as many representatives. In the upper house, we have the Senate. So this is also a fixed number of seats in here. It is set at 100 seats, but each state is equally represented. Each state has two senators that represent the entire state, and it's much more selective in here just because of the fewer number of seats. To serve as a senator, you must be at least 30 years old, an American citizen for at least 9 years, and once again, you must reside in the state that you are representing. So some basic roles of the legislative branch is to write bills and laws. We write bills and laws for a number of different reasons, for a number of different issues that come up in the country, and they are tasked with doing that. They also have the power of the purse. And if you look at the slide, I have this listed first, mainly for the importance of it, because power of the purse means that they control the money. And that's probably the most important thing. Whoever has the money has the power. And only the legislative branch has the authority to determine where money is going to be going within the government. The legislative branch also has the power to declare war. This is a really common misconception in government classes, that people will believe that the president actually declares war, but that power actually belongs to the legislative branch, not the executive branch. Next, we have our executive branch. Our executive branch is probably our most famous branch because it's the one that includes the president. So let's go ahead and break down some requirements to be the president. So to be president, you must be at least 35 years or older. You must be a United States resident for at least 14 of those 35 plus years. And you must be a natural-born citizen. So what is different between this and the legislative branch is that the legislative branch just requires United States citizenship for 7 to 9 years, where this requires natural-born citizenship, meaning that when you were born an American citizen. The legislative branch just requires basic citizenship that can come from anyone in the entire world, actually, as long as they, earn citizenship status and have that for 7 to 9 years. So some roles that the president and the executive branch plays is they are tasked with carrying out laws that they pass. They sign or veto bills into laws. So when Congress passes a law, it gets sent up to the president, and he or she will officially sign it into law, or they will actually reject it and send it back to the legislative branch on Capitol Hill. They are also the commander-in-chief of our military. So the reason why I mentioned before why it gets a little misconstrued between who has the power to declare war is because the president is the commander-in-chief of our military. So he has the authority to engage in military action basically whenever, as long as there is the reason for it. Now, that being said, he still cannot declare war. Only Congress can declare war. But once in war, the president really has the final say on any kind of military action. Next, we're going to be talking about the judicial branch. So this is really unique because when it was created, it was the only one of its kind. So what I mean by that is no other government had a separate judicial system apart from the lawmaking part of their government. It all was accompanied into one group. We have separated our judicial branch for a fair due process. So one thing that's also really interesting about this is that there are no specific requirements to serve in the judicial branch. However, this is always going to be someone of legal background, whether it be a very successful lawyer or more than likely going to be just a very successful judge that has worked his or her way up through the federal court system. This is also the Supreme Court is also the highest court in the United States, meaning that if they pass a law or if they deem a law unconstitutional, that cannot be overridden by any other state or any other entity. They determine the law of the land. And their basic job is to review the constitutionality of laws in court cases that are presented to them. So they get presented, or they're presented thousands of cases every single year, but they only get to select maybe a few hundred at most. And their job is to review the constitutionality of the laws and the cases that are in front of them to deem whether it fits the mold of the Constitution. Is this legal based on what we know about the Constitution? So that's pretty much their role. So let's go ahead and talk about the checks and balances. So I went ahead and kind of alluded to some of these earlier in the presentation, but let's go ahead and look at those ones that I was alluding to. So the whole point of the checks and balance system is to make sure that no one branch is more powerful than another. And the way we do this is through a number of different methods, but what I was talking about today is the executive branch has the ability to veto bills passed by Congress. So veto is you throw it out and you give it back to where it came from and tell them to go fix it. So Congress can actually respond to this veto by overriding the veto or overruling the veto. And this must happen with a two-thirds vote. It can happen with one less, it can happen with one more, but it has to be at least a two-thirds vote to override a presidential veto. Now, that being said, if this happens and the Supreme Court is in agreement with the president that this law, should not be in place, they can actually rule it unconstitutional if it is unconstitutional. Now, granted, even if they don't agree with the law, if it's not unconstitutional, they can't rule it ineffective. So lastly, I want you guys to go ahead and fill out the graphic organizer that can be found on the class website. This graphic organizer just it just has three separate spots for you to list different information about the individual branches. And in those boxes, I'd like you guys to write the basic requirements and the basic roles of each branch. And then in those spaces that there are lines that connect each one of these boxes, I'd like you guys to write out the checks and balances on those lines and how each branch is influenced by another. If you guys would like a little bit more information on the government and how it's formulated and everything, you can find it all in the Constitution. I do understand that verbiage is a little difficult, so I have also added two separate readings that are in plain English that are going to be a little bit easier to read, but might not give you as much information as the original text. But I do have those options available in case you guys would like to further your reading and further your information on how the government is structured.